Elson, a very good afternoon, and welcome to a very informal program, a very informal podcast today. Elson, you wear a lot of hats, the economic advisors, leader of the opposition. You also wear the hat of treasurer of the PNCR, and no doubt 1,000 other hats within the APNU coalition.
Oil and gas.
Welcome, oil and gas. You see what I'm telling you? Oil and gas and a whole host of other things. Welcome to our broadcast this afternoon.
Good to be here, good to be here.
A very, very substantive press conference today.
Absolutely.
A lot of numbers to make sense of, and that's what I want us to spend some time doing for the Guyanese people this afternoon, making sense of the numbers. Now, a lot of core development goals were rolled out, highlighted today. Income and employment. Now, Elson, this is where it's at. We have learned to read the fine prints, and as far as Borna once said, it's not only important to read what is on the line, but what is between the lines as well. For instance, Elson, the last administration told us 50,000 jobs. What it didn't tell us is what kind of work you get.
Absolutely.
You know, 2-day, 3-day, 10-day work. People want more than that if they're going to feed their families and then they're going to lead full lives in this country. Absolutely. Talk to us about some of this income and employment initiatives that were rolled out, guarantee all households a livable monthly income, among others. Talk to us about some of these issues.
No, absolutely. To us, it is really important that we recognize that as a country, with our resources, we need to be providing people with good paying jobs. It makes no sense that people in jobs where they're struggling, they're working poor, they can't make ends meet, and the cost of living crisis is overwhelming them. Rather, we need to ensure that we're building out jobs that pay well. So to that end, we have programs like the student stipend program that is supposed to encourage people to go and study to increase their level of qualification so they can get higher paying jobs. But also those who want to go back and get, whether it is your math or your English at CSEC, you can go back and you'll be paid $50,000 a month while you study. So that is so vital. We're also talking about expanding the non-oil economy by providing access to finance for small businesses through a much larger small business bureau, but also for medium to large scale businesses through access to our development and investment bank that will provide lower interest loans.
I just slow down a little bit for us. Folks, I want you all to know, number one, we got a live audience this afternoon looking very beautiful in green.
100%.
100%. And we're grateful to have these folks with us. We are at the Umanayana, where nomination day activities, even though it's days away, have already commenced. And we are out here with our podcast. I want you to slow down a little bit for this reason.
Sure.
Now, the jump from an oil economy that is going to do a lot of the funding for the projects and programs and proposals, a lot of it. The non-oil economy under this administration has not performed very well. And it's important when you have an oil economy to ensure that the non-oil economy kind of keeps pace as much as it can. That is why it's so important, some of these issues you're talking about this afternoon.
Absolutely. Well, it is vital that we generate employment outside of the oil industry, even though, of course, there will be some employment in the oil industry. What we've seen is Gaisuco struggle under this government. We've seen them miss production targets. We want to reassure Gaisuco workers no workers will be laid off. Rather, we will help workers to have higher salaries through training and through productive activities at Gaisuco. And we've also seen, unfortunately, the gold sector not perform as it should have. So that's another area that we will revive.
Yeah, it was horrible
going.
last year.
Yeah.
I saw the Minister of Natural Resources suddenly said it showed a big bump this year. Interesting. On the eve of a general and regional election. Suddenly a big bump.
Yeah, that's typical, isn't it?
Yes,
and really what we want to do is to push employment in diversifying our economy so that there are these good paying jobs. And we recognize that some of the slump in many of these sectors has resulted in a shortage of foreign currency, which has also held businesses back from being able to expand and to produce, and also has contributed to the cost of living crisis, because if you can't bring in goods, then obviously you will have a shortage of the goods.
Excellent. I just want to run through quickly some of the issues that were covered today. This guarantee of all households a livable monthly income, ensuring full employment with a living wage for all full-time workers, reducing and ending poverty, especially food and nutrition poverty. Very important. Very, very important. And then this is a big one, because going hand in hand with these jobs that must be created, the folks who got the bulk of this 10-day work, Now, this is a small amount of money, by and large. Cost of living, bringing inflation and the cost of living, this high cost of living under control. This wasn't the situation over the last 5 years under the Abno FC government at all. But we see this rise in cost of living. I think a certain food price index out of the local the manufacturing something G something, but it showed a 77% increase in food items.
Yeah, it's been very significant. The cost of living crisis has been biting, painful for Guyana in particular, because as the country grows, we've not been able to keep up, and that has resulted in very high prices. Now, of course, the government has claimed that they're doing a lot for agriculture, but you're not seeing it in the market. That's why you're seeing these high prices. You're not seeing that additional production and the lower costs of production. What we want to reassure Guyanese is that the cost of living crisis is front of mind. We're going to ensure that there is low cost fertilizer available so that farmers can benefit from that. That will bring the cost of food down by 20 to 30%. And we also want to reassure Guyanese that having access to fertilizer will expand our agricultural production so that we're able to not only meet domestic needs, but to export. And that is going to be so vital in terms of building our economy. We also recognize that there's a lack of competition, so we want to provide access to finance so the small businesses can come into the market, and that can help to bring prices down through competition.
Excellent. I want us to go on now. You talked about some of these numbers already there, but directly, and perhaps talk to us about how we can pay for some of this. I heard a certain vice president during what we call the corner shop show just yesterday afternoon talk about these lavish plans that we got. No, they never told us how they can pay for the gas to shore and what they're doing with Gaisuku and lots of the other big projects. But they're going to be paid for. I want you to explain some of that. I'm just going to call some figures of some notes that I have here. 100 billion on salary increases, 40 billion raising the income tax threshold to 400,000, 40 billion for that, 53 billion for pension increase, 41,000 to 100,000 per month from 41,000 to $100,000 per month for our pensioners, 74,000 pensioners, 9 billion for tertiary education stipends. Now, that's a sweet one there. The pensioners and this one here, the tertiary stipend. Those are some very sweet ones. And then 25 billion for child care allowance, another very important one if we understand the kind of society that we live in. Talk us through some of this.
Well, what we really need to kind of absorb is that only a few years ago the national budget was 380 billion. And now it is 1,380 billion. So you've seen a sharp increase in spending, but you've not seen a government that is invested in capacity, that has rooted out corruption, that is actually administering this country well. So there are a couple of serious consequences of that. One, being that hundreds of billions of dollars are wasted. We saw recently some commentary around the Eccles to Ogle Road, which is costing twice what it really should be costing. You've seen the gas to shore project, as you mentioned, the cost of that moving from several $100 million US to billions of US, spiraling totally out of control, and we're still to see a single kilowatt from that particular project, which is just really ridiculous. We've seen when
that sounds like the Skeldon modernization project, the Skeldon sugar factory all over again.
I'm very concerned about that project. Additionally, we've seen this government not one but two power ships, even though we explained to them that they needed to get backup power earlier. That ended up costing the Guyanese public 50 to 60 million US more. Now what we're going to do is administer the country well, which will first of all cut out those hundreds of billions that are being wasted. And second of all, what we've observed is that the level of corruption is so significant. And this is a really vital point. When monies are stolen in Guyana, because we do have money laundering legislation and so on, you can't put it in the bank. You can't spend it and recycle it into the economy. You got to stash it in your mattress. And when that money is stashed in the mattress...
Or in the saucepan in the backyard.
Well, there you go. It doesn't generate any tax revenue because it's not flowing through the economy. It doesn't generate new jobs. It doesn't grow the economy. And that is one of the reasons that we are, again, hundreds of billions of dollars below where we would be if we were normally spending this money. If you look at the budgets in 2014, budgets in 2015, budgets during our time as well as theirs, you saw that there was much more tax revenue relative to the size of the overall budget. So a lot of spending is happening, but it's not generating much tax revenue. That means that that money is going into people's pockets. And so the sad tragedy, the side effect of this high level of corruption is not just bad roads, it's not just lack of access to healthcare and education and so on. It's not just poor performance, it's that we're not getting the revenue that we would otherwise get. So once these governance problems are remedied, which we will remedy quickly and efficiently, we will see significant revenues to help us to fund our social programs. That's one thing. Additionally, the Natural Resources Fund has been managed very poorly by this government. There is supposed to be an investment committee that is supposed to be investing in these funds. But the government has absolutely plundered that Natural Resources Fund, changing the rules so they can take out as much as 98% of it. And so as a consequence, the investment committee has not really been active. That has meant that we've got lower returns from the Natural Resources Fund than we really should. So we should make lots more money from our sovereign wealth fund, and we will make much more once we are in government. I would add to that there's been a lot of financial leakages. You look at the audits. The government, first of all, refused to audit the oil and gas industry, and then we saw a $214 million dispute, which could yield over $100 million back to the taxpayer. But that has been dawdling along. We've not seen any progress there. We're also looking at disputes in the gas energy project due to the government's incompetence again, that are looking at like 100 million US as well. These are huge numbers, and it costs taxpayers. It means the taxpayers are not receiving the benefit that they should receive, and they are frequent. There's so many examples of these kinds of things. So that to me is the tragedy, is that the quality of governance is so poor and the level of corruption so high that you're spending all this money in this year alone. They're spending 5 years worth of budgets. And I'm thinking to myself, do you feel 5 years worth of progress? Last year was another 5 years worth of budget. Did you feel 5 years? It's a real tragedy.
Yeah. Also, on that note, I heard somebody coin it this way, that under the last administration, the AFC, we spent $1.2 trillion, I think it was.
Something like that.
We're closing in on $5 trillion.
Well, there you go.
And so that question that you've asked here has a lot of merit. Do you feel better off? Than you did the last 5 years? And that is a challenge lots of folks are having. Don't even listen to us. Just read Sabbath News every Monday. They have how the cost of living affecting you, that column, that article there. And for the last 2 years, the refrain is always the same. Things hard, things tight on people in this country. But in this very interesting, very substantive press conference today out of the APNU coalition, as Elson has said here, the sustainability of these numbers were discussed, and the revenue sources. You did talk about increased oil revenue, the Natural Resource Fund, auditing and efficiency. You did touch on that. Good governance, dividend. This sounds very, very nice. Talk to us a little bit about that, perhaps. We also spoke about economic growth and tax multipliers. For instance, higher domestic demand, more VAT, more tax revenues without raising taxes, targeted social transfer aimed at putting the people first, and here we talk about a strategic mix of cash, subsidies, benefits. This sounds like nice time for the people of this country finally, because as we've been saying, Elson, friends have had their time, favorites have had their time, family and flatterers, they have had their time. They've had 5 years. It's time we put the people first.
Well, the UN development goals, the sovereign development goals, indicate that we should be halving poverty, I believe it was by 2030. Now, the amount of spending that has happened, which is something like 15 years worth of spending when you total it up, 15 years from now is way past the 2030 mark. And the government seems to have no interest. They don't even talk about poverty. They don't talk about improving people's lives in that way. But we will eliminate poverty within the first 3 years. We will eliminate malnutrition, childhood malnutrition, which is a serious issue. We've seen UNICEF reports on childhood malnutrition in Guyana, which within the first few years. We will knock those things out because we believe that ultimately the country cannot claim to be developed if its people are poor and its children are starving. That to us is obvious. But the problem is, it is clearly not obvious to this government because they don't talk about it, and they don't take the type of substantive measures that we're talking about here that would help to improve that in a major way. Now, another thing in terms of the good governance dividend is this: once we are able to clean up this corruption and this incompetence, it's not that we're cleaning it up and then we're keeping the cash back. We believe that Guyanese should be benefiting from a government which is run well. And so that will be cash that's directly provided to Guyanese to improve their lives. We are not about this friends, favorites, families, hoarding off the money in lock off in a corner. No, we believe that Guyanese should benefit. We believe that that will expand our economy as well, generate jobs. And that is the way to go. It is, to me, absolutely ridiculous that we're in a country right now with a per capita GDP, adjusting for prices, as high as the US. On par with the UAE, nearly as high as the UAE, and people are punishing. When is this government going to turn things around? When Guyana has the highest per capita income in 2 years? This is ridiculous. We need to take significant measures to improve people's lives. The finance is available. We just need to govern the country properly.
Robin, we're punishing and punishing bigly. Robin, what's the number you're seeing at the back there in terms of time? Huh? Sorry, I didn't hear that. 16:04. Just want to know how much time we have left on the broadcast. Good. So here is this. Here is this aspect of the press conference I found very, very interesting. We talked about some strategic principles for this kind of financial architecture that's going to aid in bettering the lives of Guyanese, putting Guyanese first. Affordability. It is designed with current and projected fiscal space. Effectiveness. The investments are targeted to maximize impact across the sectors. Sustainability, long-term planning via medium-term fiscal and public financial management framework. Data-driven planning, development that will rely on economic data and inclusive consultation. Tell we do the homework. Equity, ensuring that the economic gains reach all demographics and regions. We've thought it through. Elson.
Absolutely. We've designed a social safety net that will touch the various aspects of poverty and ensure that Guyanese are lifted out of poverty. But also, we recognize that we need to have structure. We recognize we need to be thoughtful. So as an example, we believe that in the first year, there's not going to be more than 30% of the national budget that goes towards our social safety net. But the thing is, the national budget is so monstrous that 30% is larger than the entire budget in, I think it was 2021. That's what's happened. The national budget has grown so much that there's a lot of fiscal space. So there is more than enough for us to be able to accomplish these objectives, but also we recognize that we have to be thoughtful in the way that we approach it. That's why many of our projects, many of our programs are not necessarily blanket programs, but they're targeted. So as an example, when we talk about pensioners, we're not saying everyone in Guyana, we're saying the pensioners who are Guyanese who live in a state of, who are some of the low-income Guyanese, they need that. When we talk about public servants, that's a specific group. When we talk about students, that's a specific group. When we talk about the 10-day workers, that's a specific group. And when it comes to 10-day workers, we want to reassure people that it's not that we're trying to get rid of 10-day workers or anything like that.
Neither sugar workers.
Neither sugar workers. But rather, we're about enabling Guyanese. So we want 10-day workers not only to be getting the same $50,000 or so that they're getting, we want them to be able to get additional monies to train. Because ultimately, you can't live off of 50,000. You can't live off 100,000. Ultimately, you have to be able to get the skills and the human capital to be able to uplift your life and to move forward. What we've seen from the PPP is this mindset that they want to hold you down, keep you in poverty. And so as a consequence, they're not doing things that are in the interest of 10-day workers, sugar workers, etc. Rather, they're just giving them the bare minimum. To us, I think to the 10-day workers, it is obvious that you can't be living for the rest of your life on $50,000 a month.
And I put it in this context, you can't be living on $50,000 if goods in the market just gone up 77%.
That's true.
And Elson, I can shock you here now. I mean, this one is thing to change government on. Our favorite egg ball gone up by 15%.
Oh no.
15%. Nothing is sacred anymore in this country.
I am telling you.
Nothing is sacred. So these these are the things we're grappling with. Now, I heard this analogy coming out of this press today that there's a paradox in this country. We got a high per capita GDP on par with the UAE, but the poverty level. I want to circle back and massage that a little bit, because I noticed in the corner shop show yesterday, the vice president did not touch. He tried to hit on our policies and our plans and our proposals, but he didn't touch how they're addressing this high cost of living, this soaring cost of living. Now, if just throwing money at it could have solved it, the cash grants that have already been thrown at it would have solved it. But I think it's some deeper structural things that needs to be done.
I would say, though, I am even more alarmed by the PPP's approach. I spoke to a senior PPP person, and the person said to me, there's no cost of living crisis.
Wow.
That was so disturbing. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of when there was a blackout crisis, and I said to them, you need additional power. And the person looked at me like, blackout is a normal thing, why would we need additional power? It is really concerning.
But I see they probably took you up on that, because 2 power ships later.
Well, we went through several blackout crises before they started to take us up on it.
Correct.
Know? And it was, and the thing that is so worrisome is, if you can't see that there's a cost living crisis, what can you see? What can you see? Are you even living in this country? That's unbelievable.
If some of this due to perhaps, you did touching it, corruption, lots of inbuilt inefficiencies, and also wholesale power failure. Wholesale power and policy failure by the PPP.
There's also, to me, an element of, and Guyanese would use this term, there's an element of just bad-mindedness about this government. It's all, you want it to yourself. When your budget has increased 5-fold, an extra $1 trillion in spending, are you still not going to give people benefits? When would you give people benefits? Is there a universe in which you would give people benefits? Because it seems like you just never would. It's crazy to me. There's been a cost living crisis that every single government the world over has talked about, has said they're going to take measures to address. And people in this government are saying there's no cost living crisis. It's unbelievable.
That's an aloofness
and it gives you an idea that if they're allowed to continue, Guyanese will not be able to benefit. There's something that I also want to point out to viewers, which is disturbing. In many corrupt oil countries, they will have high incomes, 75% poverty. Equatorial Guinea is famous for having a higher per capita income than Spain, 75% poverty. Are we heading in that direction? Because right now we have a higher per capita income than Spain, and you have between 30 and 40% poverty, and a government that's not talking about it. That to me is a red flag in terms of the direction of travel of this country, and Guyanese must put an end to it when September 1st.
But God forbid Guyanese give them another 5 years. Wounded, badly wounded. But it seems to be that they don't talk about anything unless it's a crisis. The blackout situation, proliferation of it, and then they kind of ignore it, and then they try to do something about it. Even these folks on the cash grant issue, like, what cash grant is needed? We didn't need no cash grant. Everything nice. And then a series of cash grants. They're frowned and scoffed at cash grants. And then suddenly, cash grant is the order of the day.
They only provided a cash grant because of our relentless pressure. We knew that there was $60 billion there, an unexpected $60 billion that we got due to the high oil price because of the war in Ukraine. And so we relentlessly pressured them to make sure they provide that to Guyanese, and eventually they did. But it just goes to show you, this is money that was unexpected money that you just happened to get in your hand. And even that, it took years of pressure for us to get them to provide that to Guyanese. Remember, this is Guyanese's own money. It's not the PPP's personal money. It's not Jagdio's personal money. It's your money. And the PPP refused for years to give that. And then in the end, they give a little measly something. I think also there's just an element of extreme incompetence. That cash grant took forever to hand. Was it like 5-6 months before they were able to hand it out?
Yes, even though the National Assembly had approved it for a long time before that.
Exactly. And so to me, they could have done a far better job in terms of administering that. Public servants and pensioners could have gotten it immediately, but they dragged their feet on that. And so I think that is kind of what you're looking at. It's a government which is incompetent, doesn't know it's incompetent, or doesn't want to admit it, and therefore doesn't want to seek help.
Yeah, even now there's a lot of foot dragging because there's supposed to be, I think, an 8% that is paid to public servants, and they're going to wait until they get close to the election, and then they're going to pay it. Interesting.
It's politicking rather than looking at benefiting people.
Yeah, but just as we wrap up, I just wanted to pick your brain on a couple of other things. Now, during this press conference today that dealt with these substantive issues, I heard that some of the key differences between what we do and what they try to do, we promote planning and institutional reform, while there are guesswork of one man. Unless he don't move, nothing moves. Now that there is a big difference there.
Absolutely.
Teamwork.
I think that's one thing that is a major difference between our policies, our approach, and the people's approach. When we talk about feasibility studies, they say they don't need a feasibility study. When we spoke about the gas energy project, they just decided to put it at Wales, even though the soil was not appropriate for that site, and that has cost us at minimum 120 US, I believe, but perhaps much more, as the project seems to be in serious danger. There seems to be a disregard, a disinterest in thinking things through, in seeking advice, in hiring consultants, in interrogating how we should approach things, and just this blanket approach. Let's just do it, and whatever happens.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
That's usually
it costs $2 billion US.
Yeah,
but it's a no-brainer. I mean, unbelievable.
Correct. I'm with you there. Now, finally, folks, finally. The two political parties, they're going head to head with their ideas, contention of ideas. Have there a lot of plans and the programs of the other parties, of the smaller parties? Are you concerned about that? Are you concerned that Guyanese people are not getting a good sense of what are the offerings of the other parties?
Well, one of the things that's so critical...
Is it important to have plans and proposals?
Oil-driven economies are tricky economies to manage. There are a lot of considerations that have to be taken on board, and it is, I think, for 7 years now that I've been advocating these types of policies. Now, to me, I think small parties, I'm concerned that they may make some of the typical mistakes that that you see in a lot of oil economies. Now, our cash grants are structured, are well thought out, because we appreciate that you can get yourself in trouble if you haven't thought these things through. So we're not calling random numbers, but rather we are specifying numbers that will deliver elimination of poverty, that will deliver elimination of malnutrition, that will deliver improvement in school attendance, that will deliver improvement in performance in schools, higher incomes, diversification of the economy. Our policies have had a lot of thought behind them. There's mathematics behind them, there's economics papers behind them. And you sometimes wonder if some of these small parties are just guessing, unfortunately.
Elson, thank you so much for spending this time here with us this afternoon. So at short notice, walking us through some of the major signposts coming out of the press conference today, breaking it down for Guyanese, because we believe you need information to make informed decisions. And in that regard, and everything we've gone through this afternoon, we're putting you first. Thanks for joining us. That's our time. That's our program. Smash that emoji button, folks. Share the live for us from here at the Umanayana in Kingston. That's our time. That's our program. And folks, nomination day is on Mondays. Monday, right, folks? Nomination day. Monday, we're meeting out here from about 8 o'clock in the morning, a little further down the street behind us, from 8 o'clock in the morning, the old train station, just as you pass Finance Ministry and you're coming over to GCOM, that area there. We're meeting the 8 o'clock on Monday morning, nomination day. But we are meeting you there. We're already here. We're going to go back a little bit and meet you all there. That's our time, folks. Thanks for joining us.